What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Tremendous guest for you on this episode. We've got Boston College head coach Jeff Hafley, one of my favorite Next Pats guests of all time. We had him a couple of years ago as BC was dealing with COVID and trying to figure out how to have a season, and they were really trendsetters as far as how they were handling having players on campus and trying to allow them to work out and practice and play. But it's a lot more fun when we're able to talk to Jeff about his players. And that's what we're able to do here on Next Pats this week. Number one, we've got to start with the big guy, Zion Johnson, the guard out of BC. Looks like he's going to be a first-round pick. He was voted the best player at this year's Senior Bowl. We know how much that means to one particular NFL organization stationed here in Foxborough, but there are a handful of others that we have to hear about from Jeff. We're also talking with him about his relationship with the Patriots. You know Steve Belichick pretty well. They shared some time at Rutgers back in the day, and you probably saw the tweet about the entire Patriots defensive coaching staff, it looked like, was at BC for a practice earlier this spring. We're also talking about the game itself and the changes happening within the game, those topics that we love to hit on here on Next Pats, where the game is going, how it's shifting, how it's changing, not just for the Patriots specifically, but for everybody. And so who better to talk to about the trickle-up effect from the college game to the pro game than Jeff Hafley, who's been in the college game forever, but has also spent some time coaching for the San Francisco 49ers, really successful organization there. He's got perspective on both sides of this thing. He still has tons of relationships with NFL cognoscenti. And so he's perfect for our podcast, quite frankly. So let's get right to our conversation with Hafley. We'll come back on the back end. We'll talk maybe about a few other potential Patriots fits along the interior of the offensive line. I know you love talking about the hog mollies, so we'll touch on some of those guys, and we will be preparing for our big time mock draft early next week. That'll set you up for the draft next Thursday. But before all that, let's get to our conversation with BC head coach Jeff Hafley. All right, very excited now to have with us a friend of the Next Pats podcast, a repeat guest, and we would have him on all the time if we could, but he's a very, very busy man. It's Boston College head coach Jeff Hafley. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me back. I always appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you. So anytime I can help, happy to do it.
Well, it's great to have you on, and there are so many Boston College players that I've already spoken with coaches about, scouts about leading up to this year's draft, especially for those of us that are approaching it from a Patriots perspective, the way we are here, because you've got a bunch of linemen in this year's draft class, Jeff. And it's a lot of fun for me to talk with people who know these guys and know what makes them tick. And so great for us to have you on. And we should start with the name that I think a lot of our listeners know already, because he's viewed as a rock solid first round pick. But Zion Johnson just feels like he has absolutely knocked every part of the pre-draft process out of the park completely. And that probably doesn't surprise you, but you tell us, how do you see him fitting in at the next level, given what you know about him, not only on the field, but as a player and as a leader off the field?
Yeah, he has knocked it out, and it wouldn't surprise anybody that spent 5-10 minutes with the guy. Home run. Just overall as a person, as a football player, I've sat in those draft meetings on the other side of it in my time in the NFL. And, when you go through those meetings and you listen to what the scouts have to say about a player, and then you turn on the tape and you listen to what the coaches and the GM and head coach have to say, it's just a safe pick. He's going to be a pro. He's going to be the first guy in, the last to leave. He's going to be a model citizen. He is going to work and strive to get better every single day. The versatility as a player, he's played tackle, he's played guard, he can play center, which on a smaller roster in the NFL, that brings so much value. Strong, tough, physical, relentless. He's like a superhero. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense. He's like a machine. I joke with him all the time. I talked to him on Saturday. I congratulated him for getting invited to the draft, and I told him to take the next week or two and relax. And I know he really is not going to. I told him to unplug himself, because it's like he's a machine. He's going to eat perfectly. He is going to answer questions perfectly, and it's all genuine. And there's not many people that I've met quite like him. And whatever team gets him, He's going to be on for a very, very long time, will probably be a captain and make someone very, very happy.
Well, I mean, he tested through the roof. He goes to the combine. And so, he's an NFL caliber athlete. It sounds like, back in the day, I don't know how recently he was doing this, Jeff, but he's spending some of his spare time building computers. So he's just got that kind of brain off the field. But what are some of the things that you saw from him in your time with him as a leader that makes you feel like he'll fit in as well as you think he will at the next level?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest and the best decisions he ever made, he could have left. He could have left last year. And I think probably second, third round pick. But he decided to come back and he worked on his body and he got bigger and he got stronger. He started eating even better. But then that's where the leadership really came out, because my first year here, he was kind of quiet and soft-spoken, not on the field. On the field, he's going to finish people, through the ground, to the sideline. But you could really see the leadership come out and how he led in the O-line room and the offense, and he became more vocal. He became the guy that I'd call in and talk to him and ask him how he's doing. He's one of the only guys that you have and would ask me how I'm doing, how my kids are doing, how my wife's doing. Just really mature, far more mature than most, which again, I believe is going to get him ready for the NFL, which is going to be a lot harder. There's going to be adversity. And I think he's going to be mature enough and strong enough to handle that physically and mentally, which really helped in him coming back for one more year. So I'm really excited for him. He, like I said, he's going to be the guy he's going to be the first in the building, and he is going to be the last to leave. And he's going to take meticulous notes and he's going to study. And yeah, he can build computers, but he can also learn football very quickly. And he's going to work at it. And I would say he's going to probably work at it harder than most. And that's why I say he's a safe pick, because there's a lot of talent when you turn on the tape. There are. But then you have people with off the field issues. You have people who maybe they don't learn quite as well. He's the safe pick because he's not going to embarrass the club, and he's going to play, and he's going to play next year, and he's going to play for a long time.
It was a great story. Out of Davidson, gets to BC, performs the way he does there. And now, again, he's just crushing this pre-draft process. Going to be the latest in a long line of talented Boston College offensive linemen. Our buddy Dan Copen is probably listening to this right now somewhere, smiling, and as he's thinking about Zion Johnson at the next level. But there are a couple more guys, Jeff, that I want to ask you about, because I've been hearing about them as well from, again, coaches, evaluators that think of these guys really highly, not only because of what they do on the field, but because they sound like, speaking as a guy who can barely talk, they sound smart. They sound really intelligent. And again, not a surprise coming from the school they're coming from, but it's Alex Lindstrom and Ben Petrula. What can you tell me about these two guys in terms of what they might be bringing to the club? Probably not first round picks the way Zion will be, as we're expecting, but could end up being really valuable players to their pro clubs wherever they end up.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought those two up, because a lot of people, Zion deserves it, right? He's actually been invited to the draft because hopefully he'll be a first-round pick, which I believe he deserves. But the other two, and again, I think when you look at Boston College in general and you look at the guys in the league, they are succeeding. They're smart guys. They're guys who go to class and learn how to hand in their work and learn how to do things the right way on and off the field. And Ben and Alec are both those guys. Incredible personality in Alec. Smart, funny, always has a smile on his face, does some podcasts about food, doesn't take himself too seriously. But when it comes to football, he does. And when it comes to that room, he might have been one of the biggest leaders and biggest voices in that room. And when it comes to game day, when you have to make adjustments as a center, he's the guy who is doing those things. He's the guy that you go to on the sideline. And you talk about another guy who came back. Could he have went out last year? Yeah. And he was the type of guy that I always saw he was blocking people because he's a badass, tough kid with this huge heart and grit that is not going to let himself fail. But he came back and he put on weight and got stronger. So it was a year ago, I saw him blocking people out of sheer, he was willing himself to do it. This year, he was doing it because he was strong enough and big enough. And I think he looks even bigger now when he came back for the spring game. I was like, dude, where was this last year? And now you look even bigger. But I think you're going to get another guy who's smart, who's tough, who's reliable. And that's what you want in a center. Brother having a ton of success with the Atlanta Falcons. And here's a kid who's been through adversity. He came back and played through his whole last year as his mother was dying of cancer. So he'd go home, come back, go home, come back. The stress on that kid, the lack of sleep that he got and what he was able to do. I mean, it's an incredible story. And again, it's a safe pick. And maybe he's not a first round talent, but he's going to make a team and he's going to play. And he just brings so much more than the tape shows. Ben might have been our most consistent guy last year. Ben's a guy that we had play tackle, had play guard. So he has versatility, which again, as a guy who can bring versatility to the O-line when you can only have so many dressed on game day, I could see him being a backup next year, being able to fill multiple positions. That's invaluable. And he's smart and he has the size and he's a pretty good athlete. And again, I think whoever takes him is going to find the same thing. You get a great kid who's going to, take good notes, be the first to leave, first in, last to leave, and he's going to make some club really proud. So I think all three got a chance to play in the league for a long time.
Yeah, with Ben, I remember one coach telling me a little bit earlier this offseason. I mean, the number of starts this guy had is just, it would blow your mind. I mean, that kind of experience, you just don't see it, right? And he's one of these guys, because of everything that happened with COVID, everybody gets a little bit more experience potentially because they had that extra year. But to me, that has to have huge value in NFL front offices to know, okay, this guy's going to know what he's looking at. He was well coached. He can play all 5 positions, as you mentioned. If you could be a super sub at the next level, I mean, it coming from the NFL yourself and just seeing how these rosters have to be managed, there's a ton of value there, right?
Yes. You want a guy in that league. You want a guy, whether he's a starter or not, say you take him and he's a backup and he's going to be reliable. You've seen him do it on film. He started more games than probably any lineman in the history of the world because he got a COVID year and he started every year he's ever played. Like most people don't get that many years of eligibility, let alone start every single game. So he stayed healthy. So he's got a toughness to him physically and mentally, because staying involved and playing play after playing game after game, yeah, your body has to hold up, but your mind's got to hold up too. So he's got a certain toughness to him. He's not going to come out, if his ankle hurts or his hand hurts or he, doesn't feel like practicing or playing. He's going to go out there every single day, and he can play multiple positions, and he's done it. And you can rely on him to know exactly where he should be and how to get it done. I mean, there's not many guys like that. And as I get those calls too, I can actually tell the guys that I've worked for, like Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh and all those guys that I know and I've been assistants under, like they will not let you down. Like take that kid if you have a pick, and wherever you value him, take him, because he'll make you proud.
How do you approach those relationships at this point in the year, Jeff, where obviously you want your kids, your players to do well at the next level, but you have these great relationships with people in the NFL? You mentioned a couple names right there. We're also seeing the Patriots at your facility from time to time now. And, it's probably a month or so ago where it looked like the entire defensive staff was there watching practice. So how do you handle those relationships that you have at the NFL level, providing them the information you need while also making sure you do right by these players that you spend so much time with?
I just think you got to be honest. I mean, you can't, when they ask questions, I need to answer them honestly, or one, they're not going to come back to me and ask those questions. And two, if I'm standing on the table for someone, they're not going to believe me if I continue to, fill them with stuff that's not true. So whether it's a guy that I work for, a guy that I've never met, I'm going to be very honest with them, maybe going a little bit more detail with the guys I truly know, but I understand how hard that league is, and I respect all the guys, whether it's GMs, head coaches, or assistants, and I'm going to be honest. And there's guys I'm going to stand for on the table. I got a good story. When I was at Ohio State for a year, we had a safety named Jordan Fuller, and he was a free safety. He didn't run well at the combine, and I told all my close friends, draft this guy. This kid will be a captain for you. And I remember Sean McVay, he got on the phone, I think it was the 6th round. He's like, should we take this kid? I was like, yes. And I think I talked to Les Snead as well. I was like, this kid will be a captain for you. Take him right now. It's the 6th round. He should be gone. I was begging my friends to take him earlier. And then he starts his rookie year. He's a captain year 2 of their team. So I want guys to trust me, where if I do stand on the table for someone, I've been in that league. And look, I don't know it all. But when a college coach has been in the meeting room and seen what the kid's like and also seen it on the other end, and he's really convicted, I mean, take a chance. That's Zion for me. Like, that's a no-brainer. I would stand on the table with that guy any day of the week.
How has your relationship developed with the Patriots, Jeff, since you've been here? It feels like, again, we see them on campus with you guys, and we know that, Bill Belichick is open with talking to whether it's college coaches, even high school coaches at times, just to exchange ideas with those people. How has that part of it been for you since you've taken over at BC?
It's been good. I have a prior relationship with Stephen Belichick, so I've known him for quite a while. We've talked throughout the years. It's been kind of hard because of COVID. I mean, this was the first spring where we actually could have people come, and so when he called and they wanted to come and hang out and kind of swap staffs and talk a little bit of ball, I mean, that was awesome. And again, I respect that so much. I mean, they're the best at their level, and not to think that they have all the answers and can come down and we can kind of pick each other's brains with our defensive staff and their defensive staff, or they might pick up a thing in practice. That's why they're really good, because they don't think they have all the answers. And I'll head down there. There are no OTAs once I get a chance to, and do the same thing. And they told me I can come whenever I'd like. So hopefully now that COVID's gone and we can share ideas and I can pick their brains. And the college game and the NFL game are becoming very similar. And there's some things that have kind of bled over in the college game that, they want to talk about. And then there's going to be some things that they're doing that I want to talk about. And I think that's a sign of guys trying to just get better every single year. So I'm excited to let it grow now that COVID, hopefully, God willing, is over.
No doubt. And right just before we let you go, Jeff, you just touched on something there that I'd love to ask you about as, somebody with the incredible defensive background that you have, talking about that trickle up effect from the college game to the pro game. We've seen it here as the Patriots have kind of added some smaller linebackers and maybe a couple of extra, box safeties that look like they're going to have real roles in New England moving forward here. Is that the biggest thing that you are noticing that is maybe kind of shifting how teams do business at the NFL level? Is that it's just a little bit smaller and definitely faster at the college level? You have to be those things where you're coaching. And then because of that, that's making its way to the league. Can you explain that dynamic to us? Because you have such valuable insight having, you're coaching it now. You've been at the college level for a long time, but you spent some time in the NFL as well. So you've seen it from both ends.
Yeah, I just think the speed on both. Now in college, the hashes are so different, right? So the ball could be in the boundary and you're talking about so much field to defend. So you got to have guys that can run, especially with all the quarterback run game. Every game you play in college right now, it seems like the quarterback can run, which is not totally the case in the NFL, but you're seeing more running quarterbacks now in the NFL. And even when I was in San Francisco and those linebackers, like when we drafted Fred Warner, you got to get guys that can shrink the field, which means guys got to be able to run. The day of just taking a downhill thumper linebacker, those are tough. Whether teams run an RPO or your typical NFL offense or quarterback run game, you have to be able to shrink the field and defend every blade of grass. And the only way to do that is get guys with length who can run. So I think you're seeing linebackers are becoming very, very fast. Even some of those college safeties, people keep calling me, do you think this safety could play linebacker because he can really run and can he get bigger? I mean, look at how fast the defensive ends are in that league right now. I mean, it's scary, but it needs to be because look at these quarterbacks. I mean, these quarterbacks are big and they can run, and these backs who can now not only play in the backfield, but they can line up in the slot and play wide out. It's a fast game. So I just think people are always looking for that speed right now, and that's where it's changing.
No doubt. And if you're the Patriots and you got to defend Josh Allen twice.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen, like, look at that guy move. I mean, he just eats grass so fast. So you got to get guys who can run sideline to sideline at all three levels, defensive line, linebacker, and safety right now. And I think, yeah, you said it. You got to defend that guy every single season twice. I mean, you better be able to move.
It's such a fun time to just follow where the game is going, and especially just following the team that we're following here locally, where, it looked like for a long time that they had their minds set on having certain prototypes at certain positions. But as the game changes and as the players coming to them from the college level change, they have to change too. And so just following that transition and that shift has been a lot of fun. We really appreciate you, Jeff, for explaining some of that, how that's working to us, but also talking about some of your guys. And will be really fun to see what happens with them on draft weekend. Hopefully, if they make their way back, we'll be able to get you back on and we could go even further in depth on some of these guys. But this was great. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Phil. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you bringing up those guys. They're good kids. And hopefully one of them gets to stay home.
That would be a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun. We'll get you right back on here and we'll chop it up even more. Thanks again, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
All right, there you have it. Great discussion there with Jeff Hafley. Really appreciate him coming on, spending some time with us. Great to talk about Zion Johnson and just everything that he brings to the table. That's the reason he is the number one interior offensive lineman on this year's list of prototypical Patriots at that position. Probably could play center, definitely going to be able to play guard. He's played tackle at the college level as well. Great athlete, 5'18", 40 at this year's combine, 4'4", short shuttle, 7'3", 3 cone at 312 pounds, 6'3", tremendous mover at this position. And with the Patriots looking for a Shaq Mason replacement, now who knows where Mike Onwenu will end up? Will he be the starter at left guard? Will he be the starter at right guard? You know, and then you're going to be looking into fill in opposite that wherever you feel like Onwenu probably could fit in best. But if you nab Zion Johnson in the first round, whether it's at pick number 21 overall, or maybe you're able to move back, pick up a little extra sugar for on day 2, and you're still able to nab the best interior offensive lineman in this year's draft class, that to me would be a home run. I know it wouldn't get the people excited, maybe outside for the people Chestnut Hill that love Zion Johnson the way that they do. But when your number one priority, maybe even ahead of winning football games, should be making sure that your quarterback develops the way that you hope he will, so that you are, for the long run, built to win football games, giving him a real NFL-ready piece on the interior to help secure that pocket week in and week out, that pocket from which Mac Jones will be working. We know what his style of play will be. This isn't Patrick Mahomes. This isn't Josh Allen. You have to make sure the pocket is secure for the future of your franchise, for the future of the quarterback who is going to carry you as far as you're going to go. Zion Johnson is a great decision at that point in time. Again, I know it's not the sexiest one. It's not a receiver. It's not a corner. And you may be able to find a guard a little bit later in the draft who could give you starting NFL caliber play. But you won't feel as good about that player as you will Zion Johnson, because you know when you select him, he's going to come right in. He's going to fit in. He's going to do everything you need. He's physically capable of it, clearly. Mentally, he's capable of it. I'll remind you what Dante Scarnecchia used to tell us every single year, what he's looking for along the offensive line. And I know he's not still there, but they are certainly still looking for the same things. Smart, tough, and athletic enough. Okay, even Michael Onwenu checks the box of athletic enough at 350 pounds. But Zion Johnson, though he may not be the mover that Shaq Mason is, he is, I would say, closer to splitting the difference between those two. He's got enough power. He's got enough pop to be able to do a lot of the things that Michael Onwenu does, but he can also be your puller extraordinaire and lead the way along the edge if you want to get him on the move and put whoever it is, Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, behind that guy and just punish opposing linebackers, defensive ends, safeties that try to get in their way. So I love the fit for Zion Johnson in the first round. If you want to wait, does somebody like Alex Lindstrom make sense as a guard? I think he could do it because he's smart enough to do it. He's a little bit undersized. He's hovering right around 300 pounds, but he's at 6'3" as well. And you heard Jeff Hafley talk about the fact that he looks even bigger now that maybe he's had a little bit more time to focus on that part of his game, the off the field stuff, whether it's the nutrition, the lifting, both, but an incredibly stressful year for him. And so for him to be able to settle into this next phase of his football life and thrive the way that he is, that's a player that I could see really working well here in Foxborough. Just having spoken to coaches that are very familiar with how the Patriots want to do things and that know Alex Lindstrom, he's somebody that I think would be a really snug fit in what they want to do offensively and just the kind of people that they want to have along the offensive line. We know the Patriots, they're not beyond going for a little bit undersized center as long as he can move and he's smart enough and he's motivated enough. And Lindstrom checks all those boxes. 5'18", 40, 7'5", 3 cone, right around what they typically are drafting on the first couple days of the draft along the interior of the offensive line. So they should be set at center with David Andrews for the foreseeable future. But maybe Lindstrom is somebody who can come in and be sort of your super sub, your Ted Karras backup. Give you some depth at guard, give you some depth at center. That's a name that we should be keeping an eye on, and Petrula's as well. And the Patriots even had Tyler Vrabel in for a visit. I'm not sure if Vrabel will end up getting drafted, but obviously Bill Belichick respects his dad and will respect the kind of football family that Tyler Vrabel came up in. And it was reported that he made a visit to the Patriots. So that could have been one of those deals where you'll hear, and Scott Pioli was talking about this on NFL Network just the other day. Every once in a while, you will hear about a visit with a player who is projected to be a late round pick or potentially a priority free agent. And there's some recruiting going on there, believe it or not, because it is fast and furious when the draft ends on draft weekend and you're trying to make sure that you land the UDFAs that you like the most. You want to have established a relationship there already. And so maybe by bringing some of these guys in before the draft, trying to build something there with them, they will remember that when it's time for them to actually make that decision. That's why sometimes, occasionally a player would rather be able to sign with a team of his choosing rather than get drafted by a team that he doesn't have a relationship with or doesn't really love late in the 7th round, right? That freedom of choice is a nice thing to have if the alternative is going somewhere you're not thrilled about because you have to, because the team used the 230th pick on you. So just a couple names there for you all to keep in mind. I love some of the interior offensive linemen in this class. I really do. You can go to NBCSportsBoston.com and check our prototypical Patriots series. We've talked a lot about the tackles. We've written a lot about the tackles, whether it's Trevor Penning or Bernard Raymond in the first round, but whether it's Kenyon Green from Texas A&M as an interior offensive lineman, somebody who played every position along the offensive line last season, except for center. And then once he actually settled in at guard, ended up looking like one of the best guards in the country. Another really good athlete, 5'1", short shuttle, 40 time, 5'2", it's 323 pounds, 6'4". Those are some talented movement skills. He's one of the best interior offensive linemen in this group. But then there are some day 2, day 3 guys that I really like as well. Luke Fortner from Kentucky, 6'4", 307. There's tape of him putting Jordan Davis from Georgia on his back. He was a semifinalist for the Campbell Trophy, AKA the Academic Heisman. He was a captain at Kentucky, all that SEC experience. He's not necessarily an elite athlete, but he's athletic enough, to use Dante Scarnecchia's words, to be sort of your super sub, really smart, intelligent guy on the interior. Cole Strange from Tennessee, Chattanooga, UT Chattanooga, 6'5", 307. Really good athlete, and somebody who excelled, coming from a smaller program, excelled at the Senior Bowl. So that's another name to keep in mind. Sean Ryan from UCLA, Dylan Parham. I saw ESPN's Mel Kiper and Todd McShay had Parham going to the Patriots, I believe, in the 2nd round. This guy's an excellent athlete. Joe Judge was in attendance at his Memphis Pro Day. And so maybe to get a little bit better look at just how well he moves. And if they're looking for that next Shaq Mason, he's somebody who could potentially do some of those things. Again, I don't know if he's as athletic as Shaq Mason. That guy was rare. But if you can give a little bit of size, which Parham does at 6'3", 311, and some athleticism, he was a 97th percentile 40-yard dash. That's special. 9-foot broad jump, NFL caliber explosiveness right there. Zach Tom from Wake Forest, mentioned him on the last podcast because the people had the Patriots selecting Tom in the middle rounds to fill in at guard for them. Could completely see that happening. One of the best athletes at the position in this year's draft. Luke Gadecki from Central Michigan, Ryman's teammate. One of the toughest, strongest, best guards for a Patriot-style running game in this year's class. Our buddy, Mike Renner from Pro Football Focus, has tabbed Luke Gadecki as one of the best gap scheme guards in this year's class. So a little bit smaller program, but plenty in terms of the demeanor that you're looking for, the toughness that you're looking for, the ability to just get off the ball and run block, period. Sort of a lost art at the college level. The Patriots still want to be able to do that. And so maybe Gadecki is somebody that they're able to look at down the line as, again, maybe a late day 2, early day 3 type of ad for the interior of their offensive line if they don't end up going with, say, a Zion Johnson or a Kenyon Green late in the first round, early in the second. So a bunch of names there. It's a spot that I think we really need to keep an eye on because, again, we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but if you look at the Patriots' history, you can talk all about rookies in New England getting redshirt years if you want. Look at Bill Belichick's first round picks in New England. They almost all addressed an immediate need. One outlier, Nate Solder, 2011. They already had 2 starting caliber tackles. Solder still ended up playing a lot of football for them that year. Otherwise, these are guys who are expected to come in right away, play a real role, be part of a championship contending team. That's how I believe Bill Belichick looks at the first round. And so what's the most glaring need for a starter on this Patriots roster right now? Like it or not, it's guard. And so if we're dialing up Jeff Hafley again in about a week here, because the Patriots just selected Zion Johnson somewhere in the 20s, don't be surprised. That's all I'll say. Don't be surprised. All right. Thanks again to Jeff Hafley for joining us on the Next Pats podcast. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for rating, commenting, subscribing, telling your friends as well. No better time of year. I know I've been saying that every week, but it just gets more and more exciting for somebody like me who loves the draft as much as I do, the closer we get to that thing. So it's been a lot of fun chopping it up with you all and providing some podcasts for you to listen to as we all get ready for this thing together. Again, we'll have a mock draft early next week. Myself, Tom Curran, DJ Bean, to try to go through the thought processes for not only the Patriots, but also some of the teams maybe around the Patriots, try to project some moves, maybe up and down the board for the Patriots and others, and see how this thing could potentially play out. Then, of course, we will have podcasts for you coming out immediately after whatever the Patriots do on Thursday night. So something to look forward to there. But thanks again for listening this week. A couple great episodes. Jeff Hafley, Mel Kiper Jr., the GOAT of NFL draft analysis. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed those. Keep an eye out for next week's, and we'll talk to you then.